Raz, dwa, trzy, cztery!
This is the story of Magdalena and the mystical birds. The exquisite alchemy of 4 different characters thrown together by fate. Magdalena Atkinson, the Phoenix, was born and raised in Poland. She began singing at an early age and eventually trained as a classical singer. Later, while studying music at university, she joined a 7-piece band called Ellipsa. Going on to become their main singer-songwriter. However, she soon abandoned her musical ambitions by surrendering to her overpowering desire to travel around the world, eventually arriving in England in 2004. Later, her desire for creating music was reignited. Steve Jones, the Heron, has been working as a musician since the swinging 60s. He was the keyboard player in cult folk band Heron.
See the waters drifting by on a winter's day in the cold.
And toured widely as a member of Mungo Jerry.
I said, baby, what you doing to me? I said, baby, jump into my tree.
In one capacity or another, he has worked with some of the biggest stars in the world and has garnered a wealth of experience and wisdom in the process. He has now naturally settled into the role of producer, but still tickles those ivories like a legend.
Steve Jones, everyone.
Drew Crowstar, the Crow, is renowned for being the most prolific songwriter in the land. As well as having written and recorded literally hundreds of songs and instrumentals, and having released dozens of albums, this one-man band has also composed music for 6 television shows. After a brief stint as a horror actor, he was inspired to incorporate dark theatrics into his live musical performances and has gained a reputation for putting on memorable shows that people still talk about years later.
Drew Crowstar, who is famous for being Drew Crowstar.
Darren Coleman, the Owl, who, as a boy, couldn't stop tapping his fingers, but as an adult, he utilised that very rhythmic brain in teaching and leading Black Down Samba, a band consisting of drums and percussion, playing infectious Brazilian grooves and improvising exciting, complex, high-energy arrangements on the spot with the ease of somebody who is very at home in the world of rhythm. This story begins with Magdalena struggling to reconnect with the musical self that she'd left behind previously.
I lost my connection with my voice, but it reached the point that I needed some healing. My voice was constantly not well, and I was showing the signs of depression. So I asked my friend for some healing sessions, and she invited me to her workshops, where I met Steve.
We got to know each other, not particularly closely, but during that time it became clear that we were both musicians and that I had a studio. Maybe it was a year later when Magdalena contacted me about using the studio, whether I was available to help her record an album of her songs.
We started quite formally at the beginning, and we were working on my album Beauty and Power. During the time, we became friends, and Steve had a great impact on the production of the album.
I contributed a few little bits, but not a lot. I acted more as producer rather than performer. The first album had some success. It wasn't too long before, maybe a year or so, before she approached me again. Perhaps we could do a second one, this time a little bit more ambitious.
And again, Steve had a great impact on my work.
And so I did a lot more programming and playing other parts to the songs that she'd written. So we built up a good, strong relationship, friendship. So it lined us up then to do, dare I say, a third album.
But it was different. I called it Deep and Wild, and I planned it as an acoustic recording. Just me and a guitar and a little bit more punchy and different style to my previous recordings.
It seemed a good idea to try and record it live. Magdalena, like a lot of performers, actually, if you can catch a live performance, it has an edge that studio doesn't quite capture.
I won't be here, you will be sad.
Because we have a large sitting room in our house, decided to have some invited guests as an audience, maybe 20 odd people, and do a live performance in the house. This went very well. I multi-track recorded it, had our friend Clive come and video it. I was actually very happy with what was recorded. I felt Magdalena performed well, but she wasn't as happy in the sense that, yes, there were a number of songs there that worked well, but there could be an improvement. Why don't we maybe put a band together, was her suggestion. And from that moment on, she and I worked together with me playing alongside her, and she thought of Drew.
I remember it well, meeting Magdalena for the first time. We met on a mystical hill, and we were attending a shamanic fire ceremony run by our lovely mutual friend Charlotte, who Magdalena had her healing with and had met Steve through. And as I'd made a series of short films for Charlotte and Magdalena needed some videos making, it became quite a web of intricate coincidences, bringing us all together.
Drew was my most exquisite, amazing and generous filmmaker. He was just such an amazing fun to be around, always. And I knew that he also is a singer, songwriter, and he's producing his own amazing selection of his own music.
We made quite a few music videos and promos, and she was always an absolute joy to be around, and we developed a really lovely friendship. And musically, we would also listen to each other's albums and support each other's journeys, and I did get her to play piano on one of my songs, and I just thought it was perfect, absolutely beautiful. But it still never crossed our minds at that point to collaborate on anything else, and certainly not start a band. It was at one of Magdalena's solo shows that I first met Steve. Before that happened, I was actually mistaken for Steve by one of the audience, who asked me if I was the one from Mungo Jerry. Apparently because I looked like a rock star, so I was happy with that. But the real Mr. Jones introduced himself to me later that evening, and we met a number of times after that, got to know each other a little bit, and much like Magdalena, Steve very kindly offered to play on one of my albums.
Trouble is like glitter, you'll find it everywhere.
But once again, it never dawned on us to even think about starting a band together.
But start a band they did. On June 19, 2019, the three birds descended upon Steve's studio and played together for the very first time.
I am trusting and fun.
Me, Steve and Drew started to just play and enjoy a couple of first songs. I had so many songs to share which needed some good vibes and good energy, but it was really easy and fun.
I found it very exciting when we first got together as a trio. I mean, I was initially a bit intimidated, to be honest, because Magdalena is a properly trained singer and musician, and Steve has been a member of a couple of famous bands. So, you know, these are musicians who are highly skilled. And then there's me, unable to read or write music, playing the bass.
He isn't actually a bass player per se, he's more of a guitarist, but the bass guitar sits well with him.
We just have a natural skills to improvise, to be in a moment.
We obviously all got on really, really well. It was just a natural confluence of people. And it became apparent pretty quickly that we could actually put a bit of a live band together.
We realized that we need more energetic aspect in a band, that we are missing the rhythmic section.
I was in, and still am in, a samba band led by my friend Darren. And I was very aware that he was interested in doing something else on the side. So I got him to guest on one of my albums, and I absolutely loved what he did. And he loved doing it and wanted to do more. So when it came to our search for a new mystical bird, I knew exactly who to ask.
So Drew then told me that he was playing in this little band and they were looking for someone to do some percussion. So I asked if I wanted to go along. He knew that I always wanted to do something like this and actually just play with some other musicians who weren't percussionists.
Darren came along and we had the band.
3.5 months after the trio first played together, Darren had completed the lineup.
Everyone seemed pretty laid back, pretty easygoing, really natural, really nice people. For me, I suppose it was a little bit nerve-wracking, the fact that Drew had obviously gave me a bit of background about Steve and the great bands he played in. Magdalena, you know, I'd seen some of Drew's videos, so I knew she was a very accomplished musician as well. And Drew's a great musician himself, so for me, just someone who can hit things.
His strengths lie in the fact that he could play a multitude of rhythms and that his timing was accurate. That's always a bonus with a rhythm section. And he and Drew had worked together before anyway, so they synchronised well. But I did feel he had a lot more potential than he was prepared to bring to the table straight away. But I think that was just really not through understanding necessarily what we wanted. We were all, with his addition to the band, beginning to motor. For me, very exciting, because to establish your own original sound is not necessarily easy.
We had the task of coming up with a name for the band. I realised that the thing that me and Steve have in common is birds.
Drew is Drew Crowstar, so there's no prizes for guessing what bird he is.
Steve is most famous for being in the band Heron.
Magdalena has always seen herself as a phoenix. So we got in touch with Darren, who wasn't with us that day, and said, how would you see your bird if you were a bird? And without hesitation, he said, I'm an owl. So now we have a crow, a heron, an owl, and a phoenix.
And the fact that we're rather spiritually minded people, I thought that magical birds or mystical birds would describe us well. And they like mystical birds best of all. And then Steve suggested, instead of it being Magdalena Atkinson, how about just Magdalena?
For me, it sounded like the 60s. And for me, doing what we were doing was very much like my experiences with other musicians in the 60s. Well, the music itself heads in that direction to a certain extent.
So you're all part of other bits of music and musicians and bands and things, but you come together as a friendship group? Like you're pretty close friends, aren't you?
We came together really just to do an album, and then thought, well, why don't we form a band? Because we all got on so well. It's so easy. It just works.
Great.
So we're having a good time. I've been in a number of bands where the politics just rule. It means you're guarded about what you say to who, you worry about criticism, or you take things personally, they take things personally. So the real joy of being in the band, the new band, was basically no politics. It was just about the pleasure of playing, being creative.
I love the energy, I love our friendship, I love the relationships between us, just full of joy and warmth and respect and acceptance.
It's a very rare and magical thing to be amongst people who understand the desire to let the lunatic out of the asylum. And one band member in particular needs no encouragement at all.
When she's in that stage, we call her Magdalena. Just like
Magdalena, swapping those letters around.
Magdalena,
make a
you
big
said
difference.
today Magdalena.
That's even better.
When the moon's full, yeah.
Magdalena.
That's even better. That's a
I hear it all the time. You're different. I said, oh, well, is it good if I'm different? Now I'm saying it's brilliant, and I speak differently. I look differently. I am who I am, and I love that. And my beautiful birds are embracing it fully, loving my strangeness.
She is a force of nature.
Wonderful. Do you know what? I can tell. I can tell. I don't let her for half an hour.
How many women were trapped in your trap? How many women with broken hearts?
I love the upbeat songs, and they are definitely the ones that are the most fun to play, but it's those hauntingly beautiful ones that I love the most, and are the ones that I think show off her real talent as a songwriter. I mean, I do sometimes tease her about her overly positive lyrics and have tried to ban her from using the line "open your heart" in any future songs.
She's just a ball of energy, just full of life. She's got so many ideas in her head all the time, always wanting to try new things, and she's a great songwriter, really lovely, happy person.
Full of love, so full of
Magdalena is larger than life and so talented. She's a wonderful singer. She can play any instrument that you put in front of her, and she knows how to write a catchy tune that gets stuck in your head. I don't think I've ever heard her say a bad word about anyone, which is such a rarity amongst humans. She's an absolute delight, a beautiful soul, a lot of fun, and a real inspiration.
I saw so much magic in this world. On the other side,
I usually, as a main songwriter, present the song, and some of them have clear structure from the start and others don't, so we kind of work together on the structure of the song, but it's always easy and it gives us so much joy.
Part of my strategy, because of my background, was I would play a number of ideas through rehearsal. Whatever I felt like playing, I'd play.
I just played a variety of things with the aim of asking the guys which bit they liked best, what suited best. And they just said, oh, it's great.
It's true.
It's a bit more specific.
It's true. It's just
You can do
brilliant.
no wrong. It's just amazing.
it's always different. We love it as well. We're very in the moment.
you have seen the heavens door.
Magdalena and Steve are the dreamers, the free spirits out there in the clouds, just as birds should be, really. Whereas Darren and myself are far more earthy and grounded, the ones who keep the timing, who look after the archive, who do the proofreading, dot the I's, cross the T's. But sometimes it's me and Steve.
There are times when Drew and I collaborate, because on technical matters he can do the multi-track recording, he does the video, I have some experience of video editing and so on. And so we talk technically a bit, but we also have fun in the process.
We've just about finished mixing, mastering. There's Mr. Heron. What time is it, Mr. Heron?
It's 10 to midnight.
How long have you been up today?
About 18 hours.
This is a proper rock star.
Steve is like the Jedi master of the band. He's very zen, very relaxed, very philosophical.
A really lovely guy. Whenever we discuss anything, he's always got a story from the past. He's led a great life.
His stories, his experience with music, working with so many different musicians throughout his life.
So many fascinating anecdotes. You know, how he became Elton John's personal piano tuner, or, getting mentioned by David Bowie in his diaries, or watching the news with George Harrison just as the Falklands War broke out. It's like Jackanory for rock stars.
I like his guidance sometimes as well. It's great, and he is like that sort of elder member who can just steer us all in the right direction.
This is a man who still gets fan mail from all over the world. He's been there, he's done that, he's lived the life, and he's therefore really the perfect person to lead this band. I mean, it's definitely Magdalena's ship, but I think Steve is the captain.
There is a language and understanding between us. I feel very honoured that Steve wants to play with us. We created such a beautiful connection over the years. He's a fantastic listener. It's such a pleasure to be in his company outside and inside the band.
I had a very near-death experience. I got a heart condition.
Right, oh gosh.
And a lot of what's going on now for me is a return to something younger. It's like a resurgence of being in my 20s or something, because one of the things I learnt through my experience was that life is easily lost, but it's easily gained as long as you go for it. And this is the first band I've been with where I don't have to try at all.
There's a promise of heaven lingering in your hand. Shaking hands with the devil.
Drew is just fabulous, full of contradictions, from the light humour to black humour. He's always joyous, he's very honest as well, he's always supportive to everyone in the band.
Magdalena and I actually were happy to have Drew join us in the first place.
Drew's a great character, great guy. He's got so much hidden talent. He's a great musician. He can pick up things really well, especially like from the percussion point of view. And he's just a really lovely guy. We'll always be willing to help you.
He has such a wonderful sense of humour. He makes us all laugh. He has such a wonderful way of just being so natural.
His nature is very cheerful, he's uppy. He has a goth kind of attitude to life and loves to do things that are perhaps more from the punk side of life.
We are planning to smash this place up.
well.
The end of it. That's all right.
On a stage, he can create any character. He has such a wonderful imagination and is such a wonderful creator as well. Such a pleasure to be around.
He's very good at picking up on things and making sure we're steered in the right direction, I think, sometimes, and keeps that rhythm and timing with me. So two of us are always on it to bring the other two back in line.
We can really enjoy just being together and have this lovely interactions on stage. He is encouraging us all to be very, very vibrant.
We've still yet to have an argument. I mean, that's not to say that we don't have our little disagreements occasionally, though.
The pedantry of notes being completely accurately played timing-wise can be a bit of shall we say, a small conflict between Drew, Darren, they being the ones who are strict with the rhythm, and Magdalena, Steve kind of relationship. Sometimes there's a little bone of contention, but easily dealt with, because if Drew wants to sort it out, I just send the audio to him. He could sort it out and put everything in time.
In the beginning, it became quite clear that both Steve and myself like to be in charge of creative projects. And it did create a very slight tension, I would say, sometimes, when we were kind of pulling in different directions. I'm used to being a solo artist without having to compromise. So it's been a very valuable lesson that I've learned. I've learned how to share my toys with the other children. and often creating something much greater because of that. And Steve and myself have sussed each other out now, and we do work really harmoniously together.
With the recording, that's, new experience for me. So Steve's got a great little studio. He's really good. He gives you pointers of how it's going to work, and it's nice doing the live stuff where we're all there just having a bit of fun. But then also, I do again feel a bit of a pressure when it's just me and the spotlight's on there, and it's just me and Steve, or Drew and Steve and me, and they're one side and I'm the other, and I think I'm playing awful, like I think I sound awful, and they're saying no, it's great. So hey, that's all I can go on.
I like to see Darren in the mirror. I really enjoy that.
Look at Darren.
I like looking at Darren.
There you go. We all like looking at Darren.
I love seeing Darren in this, guys. He's so chilled out in comparison to his manic samba leader role. And it's just so nice to see him this relaxed.
Darren is our quiet bird in a band. Always joyful, always creative, very compassionate.
We have our twisted humour, we swear a lot, we groove together really well.
Fabulous drama, on time, in many different ways, flowing with the rhythms, flowing with the songs, contributing with his energy, and an amazing variety of his percussive instruments.
A really lovely bloke, very thoughtful, very kind-hearted, and musically he has that awareness of knowing when to play loudly, when to play subtly, when to stay silent. Not everyone has that skill, so he's the perfect addition to the original trio.
Back in 1970, Heron, the band in which Steve was the keyboard player, recorded their debut album in an unconventional way.
We'd had an uncomfortable experience recording at Pi Studios, and Tony was living on a farm, so we used to go and visit him and rehearse on the farm, and we had this idea of getting a mobile recording studio down to the farm to record the first album. Second album was done the same way. It was great, we really enjoyed it. It was a kind of retreat, I guess, and a lot was achieved. So I suggested that because of the nature of our house, we have an annex at the back of the house. Maybe the Mysticals could get together for a long weekend, set recording studio up in the house, and just literally see what happens.
We had 3 days together where we could have, it felt like unlimited time for playing, for rehearsals. Everything was set up and we could just enter to the room and continue our work.
We ate together, prepared food together, laughed together, and we made music together. I do Tai Chi, Magdalena does drumming, and she does various Shakti dance and yoga exercises. And much to the amusement, I think, of both Darren and Drew, we started our day with exercises and so on.
They all got up in the morning, and did exercise. I mean, what kind of rubbish rock and roll retreat was this?
It was good. I suppose for me it's not necessarily my thing. We did all bond maybe more, especially as I was new then, really. I'd only been in the band 3 months or something.
Steve and Magdalena just threw themselves into it completely. Darren wasn't quite so keen. As for me, I love the idea, but I can usually only cope with socialising for a few hours in one go before I start craving some alone time. But much to my pleasant surprise, I didn't really need much of that at all. I really enjoyed it, and I think all of us got something very positive out of it. The first time we ever played live was when Steve and myself joined Magdalena on stage at one of her solo gigs in Shaftesbury. But we'd only just got together really, so we weren't very tight as a band, and the very small audience were completely disinterested anyway, so we don't really count that one. The second one was a proper gig in Yeovil with a very kind and appreciative audience, and we went down brilliantly. But we only did that one as a trio because Darren was ill that night. So, third time lucky, the Lyric Theatre in Bridport. The first time ever that all 4 members of the band were present. So this was going to be our proper official launch. But this time, due to imminent lockdown, there was no audience allowed.
Okay, we can't have an audience, but can we still go in there as a team and do what we do?
We were shocked by the news and how quickly they unfolded. We knew that the world is shutting down. That was the weekend when schools were announced to be shut from the following week, and people started to be isolating themselves. So we needed to make a decision to keep the gig on or to cancel it.
Magdalena had the idea that just using her phone, we could put it online. We could stream it. It wouldn't necessarily be brilliant quality, but we could stream it. And so it's nice to imagine that we were the very first band in Britain to actually go online in lockdown. And even if it's not true, we can still brag that we were.
It would have been lovely with a live audience, obviously, but the pressure was off a little bit by not having the audience there, even though we did do the live stream. So it's not the same as having those people there, though, staring you right in the face. But it was great to play together, all the work we put in. Great to get that out there and play on a stage.
We actually had a wonderful audience on the other side. This beautiful theatre in Bridport, supposed to be full of people, and we had empty walls. It was quite cold as well. It was emotional, particularly the song Challenging Day, which made me cry. It felt so sad that we are entering into this challenging time, and then all the dreams and our visions are paused and stopped. It was a very unique experience, putting the band together and continue our vision despite of the outside circumstances.
But actually, it was good news because via going online, one way or another, we had something like 3,000 hits. Whereas in fact, if we'd just done it live, we would only have reached 100, 120 people. That would have been the maximum.
It was just a bit unfortunate that the start of lockdown coincided with the launch of the band, and that we've had to hang about in limbo, waiting for the pandemic to end and wondering if it ever will. But it hasn't stopped us from carrying on as a band. We've recorded lots of new songs, we even did a music video, all from the comfort of our own individual homes.
Every step you take ahead.
There he goes, Mr. Stephen Jones.
It's always good to laugh a lot, and that's one of the things that we have very little difficulty doing within the band. It is one of the joys of the band. So to regularly get together is a little bit of a highlight in the week, I think, for all of us. We can go and be amongst non-challenging friends. It's always a pleasure and gives a bit of a lift to the week.
And when they can't get together in person, they get together in cyberspace. During their regular Zoom sessions, they talk, they laugh, they plan their world domination. And together, they dream of the day when they are released from their cages and able to soar high into the sky of endless possibilities.
I love my band and all my wonderful friends.
There's just such lovely people.
We'll probably all end up hating each other eventually, but for now, I love each and every one of them and thoroughly enjoy every moment that we're together.
You have to remember I'm in my 70s, and to be with a new band and a bunch of people they get on with so well, all younger than me, is a wonderful thing. A simple, straightforward pleasure.
I just love doing what I do, and I love that my songs are having the voice, that the voice I lost 10 years ago is truly thriving. And with the band, it feels like it has its home.